We tend to talk about Mexico in sort of its classical strengths, culture, proximity, and time zone advantages. And what we hope to do here is really focus on some of the emerging strengths that Mexico really brings to the table. The country has a high proportion of STEM graduates, and it's got a vibrant and budding tech startup scene. So I would like to just ask you, what do you see as Mexico's emerging strengths?
I think from my perspective, having been there for 9 years, we've been through this transition from going from just raw engineering capability to just the ability to follow mature processes and build software, and how do you do the QA and all the stuff that's necessary to build robust systems, to now what we're seeing is a whole nother layer of value add. Because I think the close proximity to customers in the United States, it's allowed companies to engage in the acquiring of services that have a layer that's more of solving business problems. The cultural similarities and so forth start to manifest themselves in ways that actually designing products, creating intellectual property, there's a lot of that value add layer that you're able to get other than just saying, hey, I need some software built, and can you build the software for us?
One of the things I've really noticed is the increased awareness in the millennium, in the Gen Y, that IT, high tech is actually a good thing. Suddenly they're realizing that it results in good jobs, it's fun, it's cool, it allows them to play in the world space. And suddenly we are noticing the students are getting it, and they're showing a lot more interest. And that has been an evolution. I didn't see that 4 years ago. They didn't think of IT as a career. There's a company called NIIT. They were struggling to find students to learn IT, high-tech software development. And now with all the stuff going on in US, with all the startup stuff and Facebooks and Instagrams and ways, and people are realizing playing in IT is actually a good thing. And this proximity to US, the level of awareness, so when some hardware is released in US, it's also released in Mexico. So they're not behind the curve in anything. And that has been one of the aha moments. Now we can have talent. Not only we can build it ourselves, we can get it from other places. The second thing I continue to see is the increased investment by entities in the government of Mexico, Mexico IT, ProMexico, ProSoft. I see them stepping up the game, and that's increasing the level of IT infrastructure, IT talent in Mexico. The movement of goods, that continues to improve. So we can have test equipment in our labs in Guadalajara on the same day. Sometimes I would even carry it with me. It's so easy to take stuff in and out, to test stuff. Our team is never behind anything. I don't have to ship stuff and wait for 2 months to show up in some faraway location. We can do it right away.
From the perspective of what we do in Mexico IT, I guess the biggest advantage of Mexico as a country is the close-knit relationship and dialogue that has been started and has been continuing for quite some time now between industry, government, and the academia. Most of the requirements of the industry, I think, have been very well addressed by both the authorities and the support net that could be R&D centers. Mexico has identified several different industries as engines of growth of the Mexican economy. And coincidentally, IT has to service all of these engines. So the focus on IT is also closely observed as one of the incentives required for the Mexican economy to continue growing. There's a huge focus from authorities in servicing the IT sector, not just as an industry by itself, but also as one of the key components in other high-growth industries like automotive, aerospace, biotech. So I think that's one of the key elements that has worked for Mexico. Somehow the people who need to be in the discussion get it, and that seems to be a consensus in decision-making as to what's the direction that we want to take the IT industry.
The variations that you see within Mexico, so even among other countries, Mexico has this immense capacity, be it in Mexico City, in Guadalajara, in Monterey. What does that mean for outside operations looking to partner with Mexico, the fact that it has these strengths spread out throughout the country?
In Mexico, Mexicans understand that there's different Mexicos with different advantages, different vocations, and that works and serves in the benefit of foreign companies trying to either do business in Mexico or find certain solutions within Mexico. There are certain regions of Mexico that have grown based maybe on the closeness to the US border and the cultural affinity that works in this maybe microcosm or region. And that's very apparent, for example, in the symbiosis that has grown between the Mexican northern state of Baja California and California. Same issue with the state of Sonora and Arizona. But there's also regions like the Yucatan Peninsula where the tourism industry has created a demand for a certain type of talent that it's also has a certain level of mobility and can work very well for BPOs and call centers. English as a second language being their main asset. There's been basically an organic growth of talent and vocation based, as I mentioned, a geographical positioning or maybe on the vocation of certain industries that have had a long-term presence in these regions of Mexico.
Certain global trends are really bolstering Mexico's position when it comes to IT and BPO. And what are some of those trends that you're picking up on?
So one is the speed of innovation. You don't have 5 years to build a product. You don't even have 6 months to build a product. The cycle time is 3 months. To build something with agility, with quick innovation, you need close collaboration between the teams. And you need teams in areas which you can collaborate. You can do what is called Agile Development. You can have cycle times of a week. You can adjust. As you go along, you can build those MVPs, minimum viable products. Things have to move at a much faster pace. The second thing is the things we are seeing, IoTs and clouds and mobile stuff and Androids and iOS and Swift and all those stuff happening. These are new stuff. There is no available 100,000 COBOL programmers like stuff available to you. You can deploy right away. This is new. This has to be built. There's a shortage of talent everywhere, not just in US, not just in Mexico, it's everywhere. So the playing field has suddenly become level. No country has an inherent advantage of, I have 1 million engineers sitting around waiting for work. There are no million engineers out there. They all have to be built. And that's where having teams in Mexico with the size, it's a big country, big place to have available talent, which can be trained. This proximity, the education system in Mexico, is pretty similar to what we are used to here. So it's easy to train talent, and that gives us a big advantage. The fact that everything is new. So we can move faster, and Mexico has a big advantage on that. So speed of innovation and the talent, ability to train and create talent at a very rapid pace to meet this demand, it's an advantage I don't see in a lot of other places. There were times when other countries had some advantages in terms of talent. That advantage is not quite there anymore. And so it's an opportunity and it's an advantage.
So I think a trend that goes along with that is everywhere that needs software now. If you're a taxi company, you woke up one day and Uber just disrupted your marketplace. You're an entertainment distribution company and you release your shows on Wednesday night in prime time and you're used to that model, and all of a sudden Netflix comes along and allows us to be binge watchers. So that's software finding its way into business models that it didn't exist before. Now we got Internet of Things and everything in our houses is talking to everything, and smart cars, and everything is just consuming software. Any company that's faced with that dilemma, the biggest challenge is senior software engineers. It's one of the most valuable commodities on the planet these days. And so what makes Mexico attractive is where they're at on the maturing cycle of senior talent. They actually started in the early 90s when at that time the only comparative advantage they had was cheap labor, and all of a sudden China came on the scene and those jobs went rushing to China. So the government started investing heavily in knowledge workers. Tech de Monterrey expanded to 32 campuses. They have a sister organization, Tech Millennia, that's all across the country, strong state university systems. And we're now far enough into that we've had maturing cycles of the people coming out of those universities, having real world opportunities to build systems, complex systems. And so it's that capability that, why I would say Mexico's door is open for solving these kind of problems is because they've got that maturing population of software engineers that's required to build the software that the world is demanding.
We're talking about this, and inevitably the topic of Silicon Valley comes up. And so I'd just like to ask, what is Mexico's relationship to all that's being spun out of Silicon Valley? Because it seems like that there's a very clear channel between them.
I'm in Austin, and every year we have this South by Southwest, and we are seeing increased number of companies from Mexico showing their products coming over. We are seeing VCs investing in Mexico companies. The proximity, and this is especially true with states like Arizona, California, and Texas, all on the border, all a large Hispanic population. And we see a lot of collaboration happening between companies in US, and especially in these 3 states, and companies in Mexico. So the innovation is getting shared. There are a lot of companies in California, they're opening up the innovation centers in Mexico, because not just for talent, but of proximity, and the fact that you have 60 million consumers to also be, you need to serve them in US, and Mexico is a place where you can actually do this bilingual development. Their innovation is happening in Mexico. So some of the exits are starting to happen, and we are seeing this. We see busloads of Mexican entrepreneurs coming to Austin to take part in Southwest. I think a lot of it is not just because of proximity, it's because there's so much of intellectual capital sharing going on. And it's a new phenomenon even for me to observe this happening. I didn't see that happening 4 years ago at Southwest. And suddenly some of our employees are leaving us and setting up their own shops, and they show up in this Mexican entrepreneurial bus in Southwest. It's a good feeling. I'm so happy we are able to do something like this.
Some of the focus of the documentary is actually on entrepreneurship spirit of Mexican startups. I think that the generations that are creating new technology-based companies and solutions are more than ever in Mexico aware of the rules of the game and what it takes to compete internationally. I mean, they have an adequate conception of what globalization means. They don't want necessarily to start a company to solve a regional or a local problem or demand. They're thinking in the larger scale, and they're thinking internationally. The symbiosis between Mexico and the Silicon Valley extends to more than just the startup concept and the search for capital for these small firms to grow. Last year, Bloomberg presented a report of where the Silicon Valley companies source their talent. Number 1 option was Mexico as a country. Number 2 and number 3 were Arizona and Texas, in that order. There was an urban myth in Monterrey Tech in Monterrey, Mexico, that it was very hard to actually hire graduates from IT engineering degrees in Monterrey Tech, because by the time that you have a chance to talk to them and you want to make a serious offer as a Mexican company, they've already had 3 or 4 offers from companies in Silicon Valley, be it the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Googles. That was confirmed to me by Blanca Treviño, the lady that spoke on the segment that was presented in the video. And she tells me, well, I started to shift away from trying to find talent in Monterrey Tech because there's a huge demand, and I sincerely cannot compete with the offerings. Simply the signing bonus that some Silicon Valley companies offer, it's beyond my limits. So that's obviously a matter of pride for Mexico, and I think it also sheds light on the quality of said talent.
It kind of just hits the point of the value that's happening in Mexico. Those are examples of how software is being used. It's the result of software engineers creating something. And so that layer of value add that you're finding there is that, that what creates intellectual property, what creates high value for somebody is people that have those kind of the domain knowledge that's necessary, the experience that you can bring to the table that really addresses what is the business need that we're trying to solve. So you really find that kind of a capability, and there's clusters. If you look around like Guadalajara, Monterrey, and of course Mexico City, there's levels of capabilities of building those types of software applications, whether it's in the entertainment industry or if it's high-end, very complex corporate systems. You find that kind of knowledge to build those kind of systems in Mexico.
Does anyone in the audience have a question?
How does the implementing of the telecom reform law affect any of your operations, or is it?
I think in general, Mexico is starting to open up the industries. We also are seeing that in the oil and gas, and so that whole deregulation movement is definitely helping. So where before you had like one option for data, now you've got multiple options for data. So the competition has to drive better performance for the same dollar. So it's definitely a great step in the right direction.
And we need those lower pricing for more bandwidth in order to continue to build software like this and continue to collaborate. So I think it's really exciting.
That's the thing about when you go into these other countries, there are some things that it's just not obvious until you start getting to investigating all the details. Some things are definitely lower cost in Mexico, but other things are not lower cost. And data is one of those that you're actually going to pay more for data than what you would pay in the United States.
Has Mexico seen any type of a talent crunch? And if so, what is the solutions that are being implemented to create more talent?
There's several different programs and incentives to train talent and mostly to certify them. The idea is not exclusively to train them, it's to get an industry-required certification. It's an ongoing effort, and the numbers are not in high supply in any country in the world. Mexico, fortunately, has been harboring interesting investment projects, and we are aware that we need to multiply the numbers. That's where the communication between the federal authorities, the industry, and the universities come into place. Mexico is undergoing currently a demographic bonus, which means that the portion of the young Mexican population hasn't been as vast in maybe 30 years. It's a combination of factors, but once again, it's, at least from the perspective of my good friends from iTexico and Tiempo, still not enough, and obviously that's for me to take as homework and drive the message in order to get things done and accelerated.
Mexico's got a lot of stuff on the ball. There's an organization called Mexico First that's funded heavily by the World Bank, and they've certified thousands of people. The last number I heard was 20,000, but that was a couple of years back, so I'm sure it's way higher than that now.
If I can step in, I'm sorry, 100,000 trainees, 80,000 certified up to date.
Yeah, huge impact, and they're globally recognized certifications, Microsoft, Java, Cisco, those kind of certifications. It's actually a model that other countries in Latin America are looking at replicating because it's been so successful. So those are the kind of things that are being done that help us.
What is the Mexican government's role in fostering this innovation that we've been discussing?
I think it's mainly a facilitator for the IT industry. The IT industry, I believe, is one of those sectors where the Mexican government has kept open ears and an open dialogue with the main players in the industry. The current Under-Minister for Industry and Trade used to be the ex-CEO of the Mexican IT Chamber. And I think that sends a message that there is a very strong support to the Mexican IT industry, and the people leading the industrial policy of the country actually comes from this specific industry.